Live from 100 Talk Pod Studios and 100 Talk Pod Studio B. This is 100 Talk, powered by Ripid Energy Fuel, and brought to you by production skills above those of evil geniuses.
Oh, that's where we're starting the show tonight, Cole.
It's been a long day. I gotta take out some anger and aggression. Actually, I should say, well, I didn't even mean to get into this really. But man, I felt so bad for forget dude's name already, from ESPN, who is
Cole
producing that, Thomas.
He is hoping that you would forget his name already, because I'm sure he didn't want his name to be attached to that.
Yeah, no, totally not his fault, but they're acting like it is, and that was a
unfortunate,
vicious move from AT&T. And I already tweeted about that quite thoroughly. And apparently someone said Avli had his back, so that's good. But we're not here to talk about that. What we're here to talk about is the earth-shattering day it has been for 100 Thieves League of Legends. Welcome, everybody.
It is, Cole. This is a podcast. We haven't done this show in a long time, actually. This is 100 Talk. We talk about 100 Thieves League of Legends on this show. We have other shows where we talk about 100 Thieves Valorant. We talk about 100 Thieves Call of Duty. But this one's League of Legends, and there's actually news now. It's not just off-season. Big news. And we got a lot to talk about. We're going to spend basically the next 200 hours, Cole, just really riffing on this, going for the marathon show. And I'm just kidding.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure we have quite that much material. I'll probably put it around 150 hours, but
right. Yeah.
Should be somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew, Cole, at the end of last split that there would be roster moves.
Yes.
And we didn't pull the C9. We didn't say, great news, guys, we're keeping the band together, only to just slowly blow it up. We knew there was going to be moves. We didn't know that this was going to happen.
No. Yes. All of that, what you just said. Yes. Before we jump in, let me just say something about channel points, because see some conversation around that. We'll handle channel point stuff at the end of this podcast. So we'll do it on this stream, but after we close out, because I don't want to stop and read lore in the middle of the podcast, because that would be the worst pain I would ever have to experience. The big news is that it's been reported that we're basically Golden Guardians now. And some people are all because it's reported that we've signed 4 of their players. It's been confirmed now by 100 Thieves officially that we have signed Closer. Mm-hmm. So it's projected to be Ssumday, Closer, Damonte, FBI, and Huhi.
Sorry, what? I thought I heard you say
it's not important. It's not important.
But you said FBI and Huhi. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So that's what the rumored roster is. Like I said, Closer was just confirmed by 100 Thieves as we were going live for tonight.
Yep.
But yeah, that's 4 out of 5 pieces of the Golden Guardian squad from the past split are now here. A lot of people are saying Golden Thieves. I kind of like the idea of Ssumday Guardians, to be honest.
Ooh.
How do you guys feel about that? Ssumday Guardians.
That's actually perfect, Cole. That is it. Our team is now the Ssumday Guardians.
We are now the Ssumday Guardians. Yeah.
Yeah. We went out and found them a bunch of squires. Well,
that may actually amount to be, what the concept of the team is.
Plan.
Yeah. We'll actually have to talk about that. So I'll say this. This is a very loosely organized pod. So we're just going to kind of stream of consciousness our way through this roster. And then maybe a couple other topics before we close. So feel free to let us know in chat what you guys are thinking. I promise you we'll spend a good amount of time talking about the mid lane situation, which is what most people are talking about at the moment. But Jordan, how should we do this? Should we attack it top to bottom? How should we do it?
Yeah, that's worked for us well in the past as we've tried to do kind of roster summary shows. I feel like let's do that. People are going to want us to start in certain places, but I'm a visual person. I'd like to start at the top of the rip and go down.
So that would be Ssumday. Jordan, we kept Ssumday.
We have Ssumday.
What scrutiny do you have for this move?
But just about 0. What I will say is we talked at the end of last split about the potential need and actually it came up during a Keep It 100. And I'm not remember the name now, and that's a crime because it was a pure 100 take. Do you remember the name?
Snail Sage.
Okay. Thank
The
you for
snail
remembering.
sage. Yep.
Snail sage.
Got himself a 100T neck gator from us because of it.
100T net gator, 100 points on the exam. And he came up with this idea, right? That if you're not going to build around Ssumday, you got to trade him. He's too valuable to have kind of wallowing away in sort of supported mode. He's too powerful a player. His carry potential is too high. And if you can't build a team around him that will allow him to do that, then there are other teams who would be happy to and who would pay dearly to have the privilege.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real question here. And look, the verdict is still out. We have to see how this team is going to enable Ssumday. He remains an absolute gem that we have. We dealt every position on the Rift except for him in this offseason. There are 0 remaining starters except for him. He's been here since the start, right? So in a weird way, he's our franchise player, and it feels weird just because we've not really had a consistent team built around him to make you get that. He's not your Tom Brady because there's no real success to show for it. But what I'm saying is the proof will be in whether or not this team is one that is set up to play around Ssumday, or if we get more of the same, which is Ssumday really trying hard and having a hard time 1v9ing. I'll say at the start, there are more positive pieces here. And so that's positive. That's a good thing. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's the hard thing about this roster is like we are so I hate to even do this already, but we are so hyper focused on mid lane that we may not see the forest for the trees, Yeah. More on that later. Can we just come back to that?
Yes.
Let's go ahead. Look, I think everybody knows Ssumday's a beast, right? Everybody is happy to have him on our team. Hopefully he'll get a green card for the umpteenth time. He does not have residency until he gets a green card, and he does not have a green card yet. All right.
Okay.
It may come at any time, but it's not yet. Don't count on it. It's a difficult, long process. Yes, he's been working on it for a very long time, basically since he started on Under Thieves back in 2018. So it's ongoing. Do not plan on it anytime soon. And if you're a team manager, you cannot plan on that anytime soon either. Okay.
Right.
So that's out of the way.
Into your strategy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd be at the whim of the U.S. government, which, as we know, is unpredictable. Just any bureaucracy, right? Like, you don't want that to be part of what you're counting on.
Right. Okay. So that brings us to Closer. Closer was just officially confirmed by 100 Thieves. So that is no longer a speculation. It's no longer a rumor. It's no longer a report. It is inked. So I thought at the beginning of the year, or I'm sorry, at the end of the split, I thought that we would see a change in mid lane, maybe in bot, right?
Yep.
I did not expect contracts to go. I think contracts didn't have an excellent split for us at all. But he was very good and he was serviceable. And at times he took over when he was in the right situation. I think if you remember how we got him through Academy, basically just stole him. Like he was just chilling in Academy. He learned some lessons down there as he said on the heist. And then he came back. I mean, I thought he was extremely good value for how we picked him up. Yeah. Now, having him in the starter, I honestly wouldn't have minded if he was still our starter, right?
Yeah.
That said, I think Closer is an upgrade. I do.
Yes.
I don't think many people will disagree with that either. Like, I think that is kind of like a surprise, nice bonus that we've found ourselves. There were a lot of times, if you think back at, especially during playoffs last year, how many times we were saying to ourselves, like, wow, Closer's like, it's Closer versus the other team, right? He's 1v9. Yeah. Like we thought that like a fair amount of times that Closer was the key player on this squad, on a squad that had FBI, which we'll talk about that later too. So I think he's got monster potential. As much as I dislike EU as a region, I think their players are pretty high quality overall, So having him come out of there is good. I think that's a plus. Though it's too bad that, that he occupies an import slot, right?
Yeah. Although you have one to burn now and before you added Damonte, assuming that that's been confirmed at some point. I think
Yeah.
can we just go on this podcast as if all these things are happening? Can we just do that?
That's what
And
we're
then if
going
we
to
need
do.
to revisit this and say, surprise, imagine that it's not one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, the leaks that are being confirmed are sticking. So, or at least the leaks that are saying sources are sticking.
Yeah.
So
And just give me 30 seconds on that, Jordan, if you don't mind. There's a difference between a rumor account and a report. Yeah. Okay. There are some sources on Twitter in independent media that are, when they report something, they actually report it with care. For instance, Travis, even though what he says doesn't always come true, he usually gives you some percentage of how sure he is. He usually is pretty careful with how he reports that, saying like, hey, this is in the works, or they're seriously looking at this. And then when it moves into this is happening, he lets you know, right? He even color codes his little roster things about how sure he is about them. So he reports with care, you know, and that is different than like Wooloo tweeting something, right? Yep. Which may or may not happen or may be in progress. So I feel like, yes, it's okay to proceed with those things coming from Travis as reported. Mm-hmm. And I like, sometimes I don't understand people who maybe don't trust that quite as much, because I think he's been pretty forthcoming about it.
Right. Yep. And so that's the respect we'll give to him on that. Okay, I just get.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't turn my camera on for you.
So let me just say the. What was I going to say about? Is something about Damonte, perhaps?
You're talking about closer.
Oh, before the import slot.
Yep.
So even before we had announced, or at least it's been revealed that we're signing Damonte as well, with the rule change, we have an import slot open. So you have a couple of options on where you want to put that. Mid is a clear preference for a lot of teams. We're set on top, you know, and then you've got bot and support. And I think we had, you know, I just feel like for me, it did kind of come down to the jungle or mid. Which one do you want your import at? I've been less impressed with bot and support imports, with a few notable exceptions, of course. But I can understand that. And especially if you have the ability to acquire the contract of somebody who is a very proven import in that position. So for me, upgrade. You know, I think I'll say something about contracts. One, as with everybody, really like the kid, right?
Yeah.
I think he's got a great attitude. He does and says the right things, which let's not forget the importance of that with some of the other players that we've had in the scene. So a lot to like there. I really hope that he finds a good spot for himself. I do think his play, and this is something that was revealed as our split went on, I think his play was a bit one-dimensional, at least in the meta last split, right? He
like
had
a feast or
style
famine kind of player,
feast
right?
or famine.
Yeah.
He's going to go aggro. You know he's going to go aggro. You can target him based on the champions in the meta that are strongest and that play well in that setup. And we got punished, right? And it wasn't just him. You know, there were limitations around the whole rift for us. But that was one of the things that that I saw that I'm actually quite excited to see with a more dynamic and flexible player in that position. What are we able to do strategically that we just couldn't in basically all of 2020, right? Spring and summer.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I totally agree with that. And I liked him, you know, I just like him. There are times where, you know, we've had players that I really just like personally, and they feel nice to have on the team, you know, and he was one of them. Yeah. And we'll always have like the C9 game on Olaf when he was getting the supercharge from Karma, from Poome's Karma. We'll always have that game to remember him fondly by. But yeah, it's I think it's going to be seen by the fan base as a whole as an upgrade. I don't see anyone sitting there being like, "Oh no, like this was a huge mistake." Despite contracts, in my opinion, being pretty good. So that's a great sign. The import slot is the only thing that's the only thing that can be spun as a negative. If you are prioritizing an import mid, then that is kind of an issue for you, which brings us to the mid lane position, and which brings us to my position on this whole thing. All right. So I think probably the bulk of this podcast will center around this conversation, so everybody could just buckle in. I've got so many things to say.
Start us off.
As I've always said, I wanted during this offseason for us to prioritize an import mid laner, hopefully from EU.
Mhm.
That's what I wanted.
Right.
We have Damonte. Okay. So
Not
first,
quite that.
he's not an EU mid. No, it's not. Before this, I just want to point out, wind your brains back to this time of 2019. All right.
Sorry, did you say wind, Cole?
Take time back in that direction. Okay.
Revisit a time some have called Tanner time.
No. Please don't go to Tanner time.
That's where you were going with that.
No, I'm going to off season 2019, where 100 Thieves is in need of a mid laner.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a Reddit post every other day about why don't we sign Damonte? Sign Damonte. And everybody clamoring in the Discords, sign Damonte. Twitter, we got to get Damonte. What are we thinking not getting Damonte?
He's a free agent.
All
He's
of
free.
you
Pick
guys.
him up. Yeah.
All of you guys. I am calling you out right now because everybody wanted us to sign Damonte. Okay. Well, now we've got him. And what happens? Everybody's mad about it. I shouldn't say everybody. There are people who are not mad about it. But most people are like, this is a big whiff, right? This is a weak spot. This is not fixing this problem that we have, right?
This is not perks. Cole,
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's not perks. Like, especially like when this was first reported, I mean, I was watching our Discord, I was watching the 100T Discord, I was watching Twitter. The fan reaction to this was not good immediately. Okay. This is exactly what you guys were clamoring for. All right. So remember that. Remember that sometimes these moves are not going to be as good as you think they are. Now, that brings us to now. I am not a fan of this. Okay. No secret. To me, my whole thesis is in the time of 100 Thieves LCS, we have not had a top 3 mid laner. Okay. Ryu was surprisingly good. Like he was like, we didn't understand just how key he was to our team until we lost him and brought him back, you know?
Right.
I still wouldn't have called it. I don't even know if I would have called him top 5 mid laners. Right.
He had like sneaky peaks.
Right. And even then it was never, you were never getting like hard carried by Ryu. You know what I mean? He was just setting up amazing stuff all over the game, which is great. And I love him. I think he's the best mid we've had. I think he's underappreciated by 100 Thieves fans. I really like the guy.
And he wouldn't carry you to victory. He would save you from defeat, right? Like he would show up and make the key play that you needed to have happen to have a shot at staying in the game.
Yeah.
How many times did he do that for us?
Right. And so that was like as good as it ever got, right? Since then, we've tried, I think, 3 different mids, and it has not gone well. And I think the entire thing, like if you had to boil down everything we've learned and make the biggest takeaway about roster building that the 100 Thieves experience has taught us, it's that we need a top mid laner if we want to win. Top 3 mid laner is necessary if we want to win.
Right.
I think most people can agree with that, right? And you and I were super patient with Ryoma, right? He's another guy that I really like. Regardless of how he played, I really like him and I want him to succeed. I think he can still build. I think he's still progressing, you know what I mean? But it wasn't a top 3 mid laner last year. This should be the one thing we don't mess up. The one thing we don't mess up should be do not fail at shoring up the mid lane position. And yet here we are with Damonte for 2021. And that to me is crazy. Now, I want to say one more thing before I let you kind of bat for a little bit.
Okay.
And that is, I know that 100 Thieves was working on this problem. Think to all the reports that we had about all the the EU mids that they were talking to. It's not like they weren't trying for this.
Yep.
Okay, so they, to some degree, understand it. Yet, here we are. Okay? Part of me wants to say, This is just really bad luck how things have shaken out for us. And I kind of believe that. But how long can you have bad luck before you need to do something about it? You know what I mean? I think it's glaringly obvious that mid lane is the most important position to a team. We have built excellent rosters around a gap in mid lane, and it has not worked for us. What is the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Is that what we're doing here?
Boy, do you want me to? Is that a rhetorical question? You want me to
go for it? Just do whatever you want to say. Whatever you want to say.
All right. Let's start with just talking about what this isn't. Right. This is not us saying, "Wow, we can get closer," and he's better than Contracts. Contracts is good, but we can get closer. Let's get closer, guys. Let's use our import slot on closer. Sign it, ink it. We're done. Put up the signed GIF and call it a day. It's clearly that's something that we came up with as a result of not finding an import mid,
not getting what we wanted. Right.
So in that regard, thank goodness, right? Thank goodness that we were able to find a way to upgrade our roster, as we just talked about, even though we couldn't find the one critical piece that you and I both agree. And there's no sense in pretending isn't the most important component of this roster. We didn't just call it in, right? We didn't phone it in and call it a split. And you talked about luck. It's just bad luck. I don't think it's luck. Because I think it's there's a thread that I thought was pretty interesting on Twitter, and it was somebody called back to a comment somebody made to Perks. I think it was 2019, where he said, "I will never go to NA," and then somebody replied at the time and said, "For 10 million, you would," right? And it got brought back up now, obviously, as that talk is happening.
Yeah,
turns out money can make things happen, right? That people, even the people who are self-reporting how they feel, would never consider, right? You put a dollar amount in front of somebody and they will do things that they tell you they would never do. We just saw that play out. Again, I'm assuming that Perks is coming in NA. Is that confirmed?
Yeah. Well,
it's been reported.
Yeah.
Reported. So that's what happened with Perks, right? Personally, I find it fascinating that when people talk about who's in the race for Perks, we're even in the conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
That means you pursue him. Your name isn't mentioned if you call Perks and say, "Hey, you ever thought about playing for us?" Right? Like, you put an offer on the table and he thinks about it. That's how that works. So there was a conversation there. We were trying to get Perks. We were trying to swing hard for the fences, right? If we got Perks, I would have to get like a disco light in here, right? That would be crazy. So that, let's just not forget that. And before anybody says, "Wow, you guys settled for Damonte when you knew what you had to do." Yeah, we knew what we had to do. We tried. We didn't get it. And I think it's not because we're unlucky. I think it's because we don't have the pockets that some of these other organizations do. And I don't know why that is, right? I don't think it's because we're not invested in League. I think it's truly because we have a lot going on. We have a winning Valorant roster. We just bought into CDL, and probably someone somewhere said, "Hey, if you guys spend what he's demanding you spend, there's a good chance we're going to have to sublease the Cash App compound," right?
We're going to need to raise another round.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Some of these orgs play by different rules, and those rules are, we've seen it before. Orgs go under, right? They don't last. They have to get out of the game. So I don't know, I don't know what the financials are on this, but I do think it's safe to assume we tried. And if you try for Perks, when you realize you're not going to get him, you don't just stop trying, right? You start with Perks. He's your number one try. And then after that, you call the next guy, right? And you don't tell him you just got off the phone with Perks, but you say, "We love you. We want you to play for us. We think you're the future." And you try it. We've seen a lot of movement in mid, and we've seen a lot of teams making big splash in the cash for big signings, right? I mean, how many times have we seen how much C9 charges for academy players?
Yeah.
Right? Players who may or may not have played in the LCS. So if you're bringing in somebody who has a pedigree, what is the buyout for that? What are they making? And I do think that at some point, it just becomes a legitimate financial consideration where you have to say, what can we afford? Because if you're not Steve or you're not Jack, there is an answer to that, right? There is a finite amount of money that exists within your program that enables you to buy people or not. And it's not about, do people like you or are you trying, right? You can have the best program in the world, but if you're trying to convince somebody to come and play for you because, check it out, we're a cool team, and like, yeah, but C9's going to pay me this insane amount of money, you don't win that conversation oftentimes, right? So we can't forget that. And we have Damonte, right? And I would say that it does not feel like a solution to us. What I will say is, if we got that piece secured, well, one, we probably wouldn't have had closer because it'd probably be import. But I mean, like Jensen, right? At one point we were thinking, hey, he's going to be a free agent. How much is his contract worth for 3 years? So crazy money floating around. That's how this stuff goes, right? There are deep pockets. And whether or not that's a smart thing in esports, where the profitability of a lot of these teams isn't clear, that's another conversation. But it concerns me to a certain degree, the numbers we're seeing, because they're going up, right? At some point, people were like, yo, can we stop paying these players this insane, because we don't win anything.
Yeah.
When we talk about Worlds, so why are we paying them like we're the most winning region in the world? And it just keeps going up. So
Right.
It's a race to the bottom. And I'm not super excited about that. And I think this is one of the consequences, right? Teams who don't have unlimited money are going to get beat to key signings. And that's where we find ourselves, right?
Thank you, evil geniuses. You know what I mean? Yeah.
FlyQuest and TL and TSM.
So first of all, FBI was just officially tweeted from 100 Thieves Twitter. So that is
welcome to the team.
Inked. Good.
Excited to have you.
Good. We're going to talk about FBI in a bit. But here's the thing, though. Here's the counter argument to that. Because look, you're right. I think 100% of what you said is correct. Okay. The other side of the coin, though, is, and I'll ask you straight up, Jordan. Do you believe that mid lane is the most important position on the team?
Yes.
Okay. So when building a team, which position should have the most monetary commitment?
I think
the mid lane.
The mid. I'll give a bit of a longer answer. I'm guessing that the offer that we put on the table, assuming that we did, we don't know, but we were in the conversation, would have made that by far our most financially committed.
Yes, I agree. So here's the thing. This is the further point I'm making with this question is, didn't work out in 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work out in 2020. When do you hold your staff responsible for coming up with a plan to make that work? There is a time for that. There really is. What have they been working on to end up with no mid laner? You know what I mean? Like, because that's what's really happening here is we're ending up with no mid laner. So we looked around and picked up the pieces. And look, I get, like I said, I get that they are willing to make that monetary commitment. I'm going to talk about this more in a second, but the humanoid offer of like $1.5 million, I mean, we're in the conversation for perks. Like you said, they are clearly willing to make that commitment. Okay.
Yeah.
But where is the executed plan to actually make like something like this happen? Okay. That's where I was going with, like, it's kind of unlucky, because it kind of is. It just kind of didn't work out in some ways. Mm-hmm. In the positions we found ourselves in, we're still picking up good players. Like, I don't think anyone can argue that FBI is an upgrade. FBI is a potentially really great player, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a slam dunk. Okay.
Yep.
But again, if mid lane is the most important position, how many years are we going to run it back without taking care of that? I mean, if you want to win a title, you have to nuke the team and get that piece in place. And they've spent. But you didn't solve the problem, right? The root problem is not solved. So you spent all this time planning in multiple years, and you didn't find a path to something suitable. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is where it starts being a problem. And I'm the first one to say, I've said this on the podcast so many times, I'm the first one to say it, that these conversations are so much more difficult than here's a lot of money, take it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So many factors go into this. So much planning goes into it. Okay. So it's insanely complicated. That's why I'm not quick to jump on somebody's back if it didn't work out in a year. But if it doesn't work out after 3 years, that we can't put a plan together to fix this, at some point it's a problem. Okay?
Yep.
Now, as we'll talk about, like, I think largely this roster is an improvement over what we had. The roster actually may be kind of good. I don't think it's a championship roster though. So if we're trying to win championships, I don't think we've achieved our off-season goal here with this. You can't do that year after year. You just can't. So in my mind, it's like I'm frustrated because I get how we arrived here and I understand that. And I'm not like, it's like I'm critical and not critical at the same time. Because like, hey, I get how this thing shook out and I see that they were willing to hand over the bag to some players. Yet I don't see the result. I just don't. We have Damonte. I don't love this guy. I don't love him as a player. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this roster will be excellent in that pre-existing synergy that he has with, 3 out of 4 of his teammates already is going to be huge for us, right? I hope so bad that that's the case. I just can't really see it shaking out that way. And to me, again, after all this time, we still find ourselves without a single successful swing at mid lane.
Yeah.
And that's insane.
So let me ask you this. Is part of what you're saying, you've mentioned 2 names, big paychecks behind them that we were trying to put in place. At some point, do you put the responsibility on the staff to have a contingency plan that goes deep enough that no matter what happens, you have something, and it feels like we have nothing? Is that a position that you would take to say, I don't care if it's your 9th, but you got to have something? Because if you're putting the entire house on perks, you stand to be disappointed, right? Everybody wants him, and you cannot have an organization where you're betting it all on that, right? Because there's a very good chance you're going to be disappointed. But one thing we don't know is how many players did they go for that haven't been reported, because nobody.
I'm dead serious. I bet we have talked to over a dozen players before this.
So what more do you expect then? Because assuming we talked to all a dozen of those and the answer was the same for all of them, I guess, do you expect that at some level we have the sway to get one of them to just, to not have no be a potential outcome of that conversation?
I'll put it this way. If at my job, my boss gives me a job and says, hey, you need to find a way to get this done, and I try 10 to 12 times and I still don't get it done, I'm fired.
That's one way to put it.
Look, it's a reasonable expectation that once over 3 years, we hit really good on our main focus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a reasonable expectation. And I'm not saying we needed perks, right? Niski would be fine. Mm-hmm. Jensen. Niski, I honestly, I thought we would really have a chance at Niski, and I love him as a player, so I would be thrilled with that. I'd be thrilled with, and that it's like probably the 3rd best mid laner in NA. That's not exactly earth shattering when it comes to the world stage, right? And I'd be cool with that. I'd be cool with, a number of EU mids,
right?
Players that are going elsewhere to other teams. You know what I mean? It's like, so at some point we failed. That just is what it is. And you're like, if you're 100 Thieves, you're never going to be able to say that. You're never going to be like, hey guys, we swung at this team, we swung at that team, didn't work, so here's Damonte. You cannot say it. You have to say, we really thought Damonte had a lot to contribute, especially since he had pre-existing synergy with these players. He's been a really good domestic player. He's made it to Worlds before, you have to talk that up, because you can't down talk your own player. Guess what? That's what we're for. Mm-hmm. So it's frustrating to me. Yep. Again, I think we're going to be better this year than last year. So I don't think it's a total loss for the team, but I just can't come to grips with the fact that we've faltered on achieving really the one main goal that we've had since this team started. I don't think that's a secret. You know what I mean? This is what like a mid lane solution has been 100 Thieves boogeyman the whole time.
Yeah, it really has. And if you think about, I mean, the lack of success we've had, I think a lot of times it boils down to that, right? Like
Yeah.
all of the good pieces we put in place. And this is, I think, the risk, right? All of the good pieces you put in place. The rift, mid is the backbone, right? And if your mid lane is not strong, doesn't matter how good your top side is, doesn't matter what bot's up to, you just crumble. And we've seen it so many times. We've seen it play out time and time again. We have ample evidence that that is something that will happen to you without a strong mid laner. So that's what we stand to lose, right? Great. Closer, upgrade. And if we're getting rolled in mid, he's going to be playing like a downgrade because he's going to be trying to put out fires.
Exactly. Yes.
Or he's going to be limited in what he can do, right? He's
honestly
going to be
like our previous junglers have.
Yeah, we've seen it. Like, this is not us bringing you god tier, intel or analysis of this game. We've seen it play out, right? So that is the risk, is that we put these other good things in place. We've done this before. We brought Bang in, right? We brought some world-class players in, and it just hasn't worked out. There's other things going on there, of course. But without that strong mid, man, it seems like in some ways it doesn't matter how many times.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the concern.
And again, please, I know Damonte doesn't listen to this show. He doesn't care what we have to say. But Damonte, if you were, I would tell you, please prove us wrong. Like I'll stand right behind you as you do that. You know what I mean?
Let me say this, because it's important to be fair. Damonte, he beat Ryoma in lane the last couple times we played Golden Guardians, and that was him. He had some pop off games that I hated to watch, absolutely hated to watch, and in part because I had slept on him and said he's not worth it as a free agent. He's not worth it, and I was kind of kicking myself because at that specific moment in time, I was thinking we used an import slot, and he's getting bullied on the map by a free agent who got picked up for nothing and who's now taking us to task. That felt real bad. So that's what I'll say. In the form that Ryan was in at the end of the summer, which you and I have said time and time again, is what got us to the point where we're now having the conversation we just had. We need an upgrade there. That's an upgrade. For me, it's not the big upgrade that you are looking for if your ambitions are to make it to Worlds, but it's certainly an upgrade. I will be very interested to see in this position, Cole, how this split unfolds. I think that Ryoma is a player. We still have him. He's still our academy player, assuming that this is how it goes. He was really good at certain points in 2020. And there were games where he did play well. So it's going to be a contest, honestly. These two players are close enough that they're going to be fighting for that spot, right? And if Ryoma goes to Academy and Smurfs, which there's going to be some changes in Academy and some tournaments and things like that, that's exciting stuff we'll talk about as the time comes. I don't think his LCS career is necessarily over.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
If his trajectory continues as it did in summer and he continues to get worse, it's done. If he can do a little bit of a reset and get back to that spring form and start playing like he has in the past, he could challenge for the position, is what I'll say. Same is absolutely true for Damonte, right? He could improve. I don't know. I don't have the same kind of film experience as I do with Ryoma. We've watched that kid to death. So the verdict is out. My sense is Damonte does not have a huge upside. I think we've seen the kind of player he is and know more or less what we can expect. I don't think he's like a raw prospect who you just want to get some time with a good coach and then he's going to take off. But as of right now, I think this is an upgrade. And if anything, he has the experience, as you said, and I'm sure we'll see this in the talking points. He's played with this team. They know how to play with him. Closers played with him before. He knows what his limitations are. He knows how to play. And he's going to show up the top lane and somebody's going to be beaten up on somebody. So it's not a wash, right? This is not like we'll never win again. But it falls well short of where we all hope to see this team, which is back at Worlds and competing for a title. I don't think this is the piece that gets us there.
Now, and you did just sum up everything beautifully, but I'm not willing to let this conversation end yet. So let me make one.
I'm happy to have this one all day, man.
Let me make one quick point, and then I want to address the John Robinson tweet that he just tweeted out. Maybe he's even listening to us because it sounds like he's responding to our conversation in real time. But the closer thing, part of me wonders if closer was a package deal with FBI. Because again, we're having all those conversations with import mids. You know, if we're like targeting closer, that wouldn't make any sense, right? Unless they were planning on dealing Ssumday. So which way do you go with that? Now, I think it is true that as these teams are assembled, you're just kind of playing the cards as they come. You're not really like if I'm a general manager, I'm not like, oh, okay, no, but I'm planning on keeping Ssumday, so I won't have any other conversations for that import slot. You know, that's not how I'm playing it, even if that is my plan. I'm going to continue to have those conversations and see what develops, right? Because if it's like, oh yeah, but if you get rid of Ssumday and then you can get FBI and Chovy and whoever, you know what I mean? Like if something crazy materializes, you have to entertain that possibility. So I will say that makes, but I just wonder like if closer and FBI was a package thing and it couldn't be separated, you know, if Golden Guardians kind of forced that, like, okay, you want FBI, you also have to, you know, give us compensation for closer, you know, this is the offer, take it or leave it. Because that really hamstrung us in that position, because I empathize with everybody in chat who's saying, like, who do we start in that slot? What domestic mid option do we have to start in that slot? People have been saying Palafox. Palafox probably costs like $1 million for a player who hasn't played an LCS, right? So
remind us where he's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. He's a Jack product, right? So Jack means jacked up prices. So yeah,
I mean, you can expect, honestly, the message on those has always been it's $1 million, right? Yeah. Like the previous academy players who have left for $1 million, but that was their buyout, right?
It's not exactly, but buyouts have like basically hit like a 2.5 times multiplier in this offseason. It's been insane. It's getting completely unreasonable. Yeah. Okay, so
suffice to say, that's a huge risk to take for someone who's never played in the LCS.
Yeah,
you're gonna spend your money on that. That's a really big one, guys. That's a huge risk.
Yeah. So that's that piece of the conversation. I just wanted to toss that out there. It's entirely possible that closer just kind of had to happen, you know?
Right.
But okay, I do want to get to this John Robinson tweet and then we can move on to FBI. So John said, the LCS looks a lot like the NBA. Stars win championships and attract the best teammates. Super teams are the new norm, but they aren't built overnight. Last year we had 1 all-star, now we have 3. And welcome FBI, welcome closer. So, okay, point taken there, right? It's like, hey, look where we were last year, look where we are this year, which I'm cool with, right? Mm-hmm. But this analogy, it's like when we're talking about the importance of mid lane, I feel like I look to the NFL for a comparison where it's like, okay, if you can sign Tom Brady, well, not now, but say prime Tom Brady or 3 like random all-stars, it's not a question. Mm-hmm. You're going to take the quarterback. You're going to take the star quarterback because of the impact that has. You know what I mean?
Or like, maybe even you could say LeBron.
Right.
Like if you could sign LeBron or 3 other all-stars.
But the NBA is less positional. So that's why I'm focusing on the NFL, where it's like quarterback is obviously the most important position. It's really hard to argue against mid being the most important position. It's really hard to make that argument. And it may be certain metas on certain teams, you know, whatever. But like in general, that's pretty obvious, right? And so it's like, without that piece, what do you have? You know what I mean? All-stars don't guarantee you anything. I mean, we learned that when we signed Bang to our 2018 roster for 2019. And we're like, oh, dude, we're going to crush everyone. And we sucked.
That's very true. That's very true.
So
it was bad.
I'm just very bad. Like, I get that thought. And I agree. Like we are better today than we were previously. Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with that at all. And that's great. All right. I do, however, want to win a title. And I don't think that happens until we solve the mid piece. Okay. Right. And I don't know, just year after year, like something's gotta, like there has to be like just the best plan that we can't mess up, that has like 10 alternatives where we still end up with a very, very good mid lane option. And we commit so much to making that happen. I'm down for that. I'm down for that. So that's just what I want to see.
Well, I'm going to do something now that I don't like to do, but I'm going to forecast here, right? So this is a good team overall. It's a good team, right? It's not a great team. It's not going to be, we're not like a lock for the team that nobody's going to predict at the preseason that we win, right? Which we want to get to the point where at least some people are saying 100 Thieves got it. This is their year. This is their split. If splits exist anymore, have you confirmed? Not confirmed? Anyway, so let me just look forward a little bit. This is a good team, and if you can get a mid laner, a world-beating mid laner, at any point in the future, this becomes a very, very good team. And I don't know what you're just smiling at. But
someone said smile if you're reading this in chat. Sorry. Go ahead.
So it becomes a great team. And what do you need to do to have that happen? You need to have a really good jungler to go behind closer. And our 100X team has been putting out some pretty good players, right? And I think one of the things we learned, and maybe this will help to transition us toward the bottom side of the map, if we're ready, we don't have to go on yet, is 100X players are very good. They're probably not ready to jump straight into the LCS, Cole. We shouldn't make a habit of that, I think. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
The upside is there. The potential is there. You need time, and you need for these players to develop. So that could be an interesting thing to watch. Do we have a 100X jungler, domestic player who could pop into jungle at some point in the future if we do finally get that opportunity to sign the world-beating mid laner that we all want? Because the thing you can't do is do that and then say, and we got somebody to play jungle. We're going to sign somebody who can do it. That's not a great solution either. So,
yeah. Well, look, I think I've said my piece on this. A lot of people are talking about how Damonte isn't confirmed, and I get that.
We have to.
It's been reported pretty reliably, and if that doesn't end up happening, I will happily record a new podcast.
We'll come back on.
and here's the other thing, because someone brought up Ryoma. I'm going to tell you this right now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll hold that L. I'll display it. I'll hold it up on camera. I'll print out an L or something. Whatever you guys want me to do. I am more than happy to own being wrong about this. I hope I am. But I would not be surprised if Damonte, assuming we sign him and keep Ryoma, if Ryoma subs back in like week 5, week 6. You know what I mean? Like, if that happens, man. I mean, I like Tommy as a dude. I think he has potential as a player still. But yeah, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to really buy this. I hope so much that I'm wrong. And the rest of the roster, let's move on to the rest of the roster. The rest of the roster,
there's other players.
Is unequivocally better. That's great. So that piece of it is awesome. That brings us to FBI, who again, like we said, is officially announced now. By the 100 Thieves Twitter. He looked like a menace last year. His summer split was so good. He's a stats monster, passes the eye test, huge success story. And not only are we getting him, but we are presumably getting his support buddy down there as well.
Yeah.
So it's like we're surgically taking that piece from, we're surgically taking 4 out of 5 pieces. But you know what I mean? So it's not like we're signing him and putting him into
just the head.
Right? It's not like we're signing him and putting him into a different situation. His situation is, okay, you got everybody the same, but on the opposite side of that map, instead of Hansu, you got Ssumday. Like, I can't see him regressing.
No, what? Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. I think, Cole. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and he's like legit. You can at least make an argument he's the best AD in the league, right? You can at least make the argument. It holds water. I'll say that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Even though he doesn't have quite like the long history as one of the other obvious candidates or whatever, but I don't know. Like, he's really, really good. And
Yeah.
I think that signing is massive. And that's why I suggested that maybe Closer was like a bundle with him, because I think he's the piece that 100 Thieves really wanted. I always said,
Well, especially that he's no longer an import. That's crazy.
Yeah. Now
that's
the
valuable.
new Osh rule, makes that really awesome. But so, that's why I said I think he was the main piece that 100 Thieves targeted. Cody Sun, I thought was okay. He never really found his way for us last year, even though I think he's capable of like being very good, and we've seen him be good. Whatever, the context wasn't right. I don't know. Maybe the run back was uncomfortable. I don't know. It didn't
Honestly,
really click the way it could have.
Yeah, he had a lot of reps with supports who are not starting now.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so
I'm okay with that change being made. I said I thought Cody might be switched. I didn't think we'd get FBI though, and I am thrilled about that. And again, I don't think FBI was cheap at all.
I'm positive he was. Well, you'd have to be stupid to sell him for cheap.
Yeah. So
like that would be a very dumb thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're going for it, man. They really are going for it. Anything to say about the FBI signing for you, Jordan?
He to me, he feels like more like the future of the league, right? Like I think if you think NA talent, you think about who has a real chance at being someone that people are talking about in 3 years, right? I think he's way up there. And players like Double Lift and Cody Sun, I think, are not. Double Lift might surprise us all and have a resurgence, but it goes to say, I think he's the new guard. The old guard, I think, is a little bit on their way out, at least in some of the key positions around the league. You said, I like this. You said that you don't see him regressing. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that could make us trip up here would be if for whatever reason he's not clicking with the coaching staff or some of the other support players. But yeah, you talk about a kid who's had a really successful split and season, and then assuming that the pieces all work well together, which we've learned you can't always assume, but it is not fun to try to slow down the bot lane if you have Ssumday in the top lane. It's not great, right? That is no one's favorite game to prepare for. So please, can we get to the point where Ssumday is commanding, as we all know he can, especially if he gets a little bit of attention up there, a gank or two, I think would do him just fine. FBI might have a lot of runway in a lot of games to really put pressure on people, which I think could be absolutely massive for us. He's not had that, right? Honster's not a bad player, but he's not Ssumday. So that's what I like there. I'm very excited to see that. That'd be kind of new for us, honestly.
Yeah.
Bang never got going. He could be our first AD in some time, other than probably 2018 Cody Sun, to really start putting carry pressure on these games, which would be absolutely massive for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think okay, so it's really hard to disagree with that. And I think everybody too is on board, from what I can tell, fan wise, everybody's really on board with Huhi being the starter support. Not, pairing him with FBI, the dude who he looked on fire with, who he honestly looked like one of the best supports in the league during the playoffs to me. So I'm happy with that. It does, however, and I don't think we're really going to talk at length about non-LCS, in passing, we've mentioned it already a couple times, but we do have to talk about Poome, because that means Poome is being bumped down, presumably. I think Poome is on the Academy roster. I don't think we're, gonna just pass on it. Yeah, I think we're keeping him, and I'm very happy about that. I honestly would have been fine if Poome was the starter going forward in pretty much any scenario, except the fact that we pulled FBI and his support to go with him. I feel like I would want Poome in there with any other scenario, but because we have that exact entire bot lane intact, I'm cool with it. I feel sad for him personally, because I really, again, just another dude I really like, and I think will succeed. Especially some of the things that Kelsey said about Poome, just like his game sense, his natural ability to lead and everything, that bodes super well for his future career. So I love that. I do like that we're keeping him, presumably, as hopefully that does happen. I'm a little bummed, but I get it. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm a little sad. It stings a little bit, hurts just a little bit, but I can't argue.
Yeah, and I hope that he seems like a mature player. I hope that he understands he's being replaced by a vet, basically, like somebody who, now granted, less time in that position, but who he's been on some very successful teams. He's got a ton of game experience, and the transition to support has gone insanely well for him. That's honestly one of the bigger surprises to me. He left. That takes a ton of gumption to get dropped, to switch positions, to grind back, earn yourself an academy spot and an off role, and then to get promoted and basically have a resurgent career. It's a great story, and two, it shows you just how committed he's been. Right, like you talk about people who don't want to put in the reps.
Yeah.
Imagine putting the reps in an entirely different position.
Yeah.
Granted, there's some synergies with enchanters and stuff. He plays Lux like a beast, so all that there. I hope that Poome can see, right? Like I've been replaced by somebody who has experience with this AD and who has more professional years playing this game by like 3 or 4 than I do total. So
yeah,
I hope he gets it. I do continue to believe that he has a ton of upside. The verdict is out for me still on what being an academy means for a person's career. Like, it doesn't seem like a clear path. Again, this is a little bit of a different show. With the changes to academy and amateur, I really hope that we start to see more reliable development coming from players. And I'm not talking, this is not by no means a comment about the coaching staff or commitment of anybody.
Yeah.
I just think it's the system itself, which isn't designed, or at least hasn't been, to reliably provide opportunities for players to get that LCS ready game time. So I really hope it works out. I really like Poome. And not just as a dude, like I think he's a really fun player to watch, and he had some amazing performances. Slowed down a little bit toward the end of the split. So I think academy is a good place for him. I have not moved on from him by any means. I want to continue to see him as part of our overall organization.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we can find so much agreement on so much of what has transpired, Jordan. But yeah, I think like we'll wait and see when everything is confirmed. I feel like it's going to be zooming out a bit. We've already said we think we're going to be better. It's possible to, I want to say this, it's possible that we might be good. You know what I mean? So look, I don't think we're going to win the championship. All right. I don't think we'll win a domestic title, which I know the goal is Worlds, right? Get to Worlds, which is, I agree with that goal. I want a domestic title though. I want something tangible, because like we're not going to win Worlds, right? That's me being pessimistic again. But yeah, I do think like if you look at the math on paper, depending on how you rank players, like look at Ssumday, okay? Had the conversation about FBI, and look at Closer even. Mm-hmm. There's an argument to be made that we have 3 players in top 3 NA.
Yeah. Yeah. That feels great.
That feels really, really good.
That feels like 3 All-Stars, Cole.
3 All-Stars. That's right, John Robinson.
Although you kind of undercut that a little bit.
I know. But well, it's still true. We don't have the quarterback. But yeah, so it's possible that we're actually good this year. So I think like I don't see this year being an actual failure. You know what I mean? Like I
don't expect it to be.
Last year, yeah, I don't expect it to be. Last year, it's like, hey, this can like surprise us and go well, or it's just not going to be a good year. That was like the feeling last year. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really a good year. It wasn't.
Yeah. No, it really wasn't.
Going into this year, it's like, okay, but surely, like, I don't think playoffs is a stretch for this team. I think we're in playoffs. You know what I mean? I think we're going to be a respectable and good team. I would project us to do better than we did in past years. Also, I'm sorry, the past year, not past years. Yeah. Also, the other side of this is maybe just me. I need you to check me on this. Is it just me, or does it seem like the LCS is just getting better right now?
Yeah, I mean, there are big names coming. There are like
last year wasn't a good year for the LCS.
Yeah.
Even if we regress to the norm, excuse me. Even if we, revert to the norm? What is it? Usually it's regress to the norm and that, but you know what I mean? The other direction.
I think it works anyway. Yeah.
Progress.
Oh, progress to the norm. I get what you're saying. Yeah. If we progress to the norm.
Yeah, meaning a positive movement. But the league will be better, right? And I get the feeling that like with some of the moves, like it's apparently sword art is coming to TSM. I know everybody wants to meme about Huhi, and I'm sure it's expensive and it might not work, but it might be real good on TSM, TL and C9. Both look like I think the league is getting better as a whole. So that's gonna be really interesting. Like I can't pinpoint where I think this roster would theoretically finish in like a power rankings, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, I don't think we're the best. I don't think we're the best too. Yeah, I know, but it's like we pretty much have a feel for the rosters, and like I don't know where we land. You know, it feels like we have inarguably gotten better. Mm-hmm. Seems like most of the league has as well. So it'll be weird to see that shake out. I mean, am I off base?
Well, you know, like Golden Guardians looks great, so I think we got to watch out for them. Just kidding. Do they have a team? Do they have any players?
They do. It's the Ssumday Guardians. We talked about that.
We're gonna play 50% of our games with their logo.
Part of the deal.
I think this is. I want to say that it would be a catastrophic failure if we didn't make playoffs, but until you see final rosters, you can't really make that assessment, right?
Yeah,
it's not a.
Though I think it's going to be the right assessment.
I think that's most likely where we land, because I think that a lot of these kind of bottom tier organizations will continue to create. Basically, they'll define the fail state in the LCS, where if you finish below them, you have certainly failed. I think that will hold. Or expect it to, at least. You know, I could be surprised. So yeah, that's where I come off saying if we don't make playoffs, this is a complete disaster. Especially after you put money into it, right? Like that, it represents a horrible return on your investment to not even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Especially if it's the same format, which I'm assuming will
taking me back to 2019.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah. We're coming up on a longer pod here, Cole, and I do want to talk about. I want to make sure, and I'm just checking with you on.
Let's run
agenda.
It. Yeah, let's.
Do you want to talk about Trust the Papa?
Sure, we can do that now.
I mean,
take it away.
Something else in mind.
No, take it away. I'm fine with that. We can hit the other things.
I want to start with something, and it's this: when Papa Smithy first joined the organization, they spent a lot of time. And maybe it's just because they had to, talking about being a development organization and really developing players and taking long bets. And I cannot help but notice that we just signed 4 new players. And is that still the case? Are we still that, or are we a different thing now? Like, how do you think about all the stuff that was said in the past about we're taking the long view on this? Because that's a lot of moves for a team that's thinking about building homegrown talent, right?
Yeah.
This. I don't know the answer.
No, gosh. All right, I'm gonna be honest. I think I might anger some people, but I think I'm gonna be honest. Look, in my opinion, you just say what you feel like you have to say. You say what is the best spin on what's happening. I think if you look at what happened over in the last year, it's like the whole like we're a development team thing was kind of just a way to justify the Ryoma trial, right?
That's what I was wondering. Yep.
It's like you're not just trying to develop something when you're signing like Meteos, who at the time, remember, looked like the best or second best jungler in NA when we signed him. Yep. Cody Sun, who was looking like probably the second best AD when we signed him.
Coming from his Worlds run. Yep.
So it became an untenable position to base this purely developmentally. But in their defense, I'm thinking of Papa Smithy right now. In his defense, I think he made this point that it's like you kind of just play the cards as they come to you, and that they had an opportunity to do something a little more than they thought they might originally. So I think like maybe we as fans leaned a little too heavy on the developmental side of this,
Yeah.
which I think again was just brought up to justify this whole thing about Ryoma.
Yeah.
Which messaging is always going to be messaging. There's always going to be that. Like I said earlier, when you have Damonte after you try with 12 other mid laners, you have to find the right spin. You can't say he's our 13th option. Let's go. You don't.
Lucky
You know what I mean?
13.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't say that. So there's always an element to that, and I think that as fans we probably latched on to that as a bigger truth than it actually deserved to be.
Yeah.
So even last year, besides the Ryoma experiment, I didn't get vibes that we weren't trying to win, even though it was frustrating. And certainly this offseason, it seems like we're trying to win. So here, I'll let you talk before we contextualize that with Trust the Papa.
Yeah, it's the push or pull, right? There's a very romantic notion in sports that you get a ragtag bunch of nobodies and put together a championship squad, right? Like every sports movie is that. Everybody wants to live the sports movie, right? Where we found this guy, nobody knows about him. He's going to be a champion someday, right? That's what you really want to do. I think that's fun. People love that. And when it works, it's like, oh my gosh, these guys are geniuses. One, they put together this squad on a dime. Yeah. And then I think there's a reality of it, right? Which is if you have the split and if you have the season that we had last year, fans stop watching you. They just stop. They don't care. They miss games. It's like, yeah, I guess if I remember, if I'm flipping through Twitch and I see it on there, I'll stop. But otherwise, you don't gain new fans if you're a losing team.
Yeah.
So it's a catch-22, right? To get to the point where your ragtag bunch of nobodies becomes heroes, you have to build them up, and nobody has time for that. So personally, I can sympathize with the desire to position ourselves as an organization that really cares about developing new talent. And look, I think that as a strategy for your professional team, we've seen that it doesn't always play out. And in fact, it can often play out very poorly for you. Unless you're looking at last season and saying, I think that was a pretty good season. I'm pretty happy with how it went, which I'm not hearing a lot of. You're thinking that is maybe not the strategy to lead with. I think it's a fantastic strategy in the amateur scene and in the academy scene. You like 4 or 5 years from now, if we want to have the next best, homegrown talent, you got to start on that today, right? Otherwise, you're going to pay Jack for it, which nobody wants to do or can do unless you're another rich person.
Or should do.
Or should do. Please, can we stop the madness? So that's the only way you get to do that. But I think that has a specific place in the conversation, which is look at the amateur scene and look what we do. We have best in class. We have 100X, right? We're doing all these great things. We're developing talent. We're sending players to scouting grounds. Isn't this fantastic? All for the very altruistic purpose, now that we don't get paid for contracts anymore, to just find more good talent for NA. But look, this is not a charity. We're here to hang banners, right? And none of those players getting picked up and having a successful career is going to put any shine on us, really. We should expect, right? Nobody's going to remember if one of these 100X players wins a championship for TSM that they started on 100X. And if they do remember, they're not going to care, right? They're not going to put like a little thanks 100 Thieves on the banner. So I just don't think it's not a viable strategy for the LCS, where you need a team that can win now. It's the win now versus win later thing. And I think what we're learning is the answer is win now. You have to win now, right? The fans have a very short attention span. Yeah. You don't get 20 years to build the championship roster because the game's only been out for 11.
And we've been losing for a while now,
Yeah.
We had some moderate success. We had success that appeared greater than it probably was, especially in spring. But we're here and we're going to try and be better this year. Let's hit a couple of those other things I had on the rundown really quick before we wrap. One thing I meant to work in when we were talking about Damonte, and I think I almost kind of did, but I want to point this out. As I mentioned, I was watching fan reaction in real time today. Twitter, multiple Discords. And as the Jacob Wolf show was going, there's a point where they were talking about, actually, I don't even remember what they were originally talking about. I think Jacob was just talking about, oh yeah, teams are like spending money this year. And he kind of casually tossed out that 100T had taken a swing at Humanoid. And he actually threw out there that they had offered him $1.5 million, right?
Yep.
So I think we mentioned that already, but this is the point I want to make is I think that single little tidbit he tossed out really made a huge material difference in saving the 100T staff from a lot of flame. It's not like they're not going to get any flame, but I'm telling you, there was like an observable heel turn in the conversation.
Yeah.
Everything leading up to that point was, cannot believe Damonte. What are we thinking? We got Damonte. That doesn't make any sense. Why Damonte? Blah, blah, blah. You know, it was very negative, dumping on.
Why would we go for an import mid?
Right.
Have we thought about that?
And as soon as he threw that out, it changed. Like you could just feel it change. And all of a sudden it was, well, I can't be mad if we were trying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't be mad if we were trying. So I thought that was very interesting. So this, I don't think Jacob like meant to make it a point that 100T was doing. I think he just tossed that out as an example of what he was talking about. And I think it just happened to really save sentiment around 100T. And there's two reasons why that's really important to me and why I want to bring it up. One is because it saves us from, shall we call it, undue memery.
We shall now.
We've been the butt of a lot of crap over the past couple of years. I didn't even think
you went from undue memory to butt of crap.
Yes, right. Yes. I am a poet. But yeah, so we, you know what I mean? Like we've been in that position. People have been dumping on us for a long time. Apparel org, right? Hoodie org. And I think that like legitimately saved us from a good amount of that. We're not immune to it, but that was crazy. And then the other thing is, I think that freed people up to think about this roster as a whole in comparison to last year and be like, you know, this actually is better. Like that objective analysis, I didn't really see from the community at large until after that point was made. So what like a fortunate win for 100T, like that happened. Right. And it's true, right? Like assuming that report is true, then it's true and they deserve that turn of sentiment. You know what I mean? Like they deserve to have that respect given to them. So it's good that it happened.
Yeah.
But man, what a crazy turn of fortune. And don't tell me that like that's not influential, because there were like 30,000 people watching that Jacob Wolf show at the time that it happened, you know, and these are the most active memers on the internet. You know what I mean?
That's a good percent of the people who are going to turn in to watch LCS games on a weekend, right? Like that's not a negligible percent of the audience. So,
yeah. So it was just funny to watch that in real time, and I wanted to underscore that.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob, for tossing out that comment. But speaking of Jacob, I'll make one more observation about free agency, and then we can close if you're cool with it, Jordan. It's just it's been interesting. This has been a very interesting free agency, not just because of the roster moves, right, but because of the competition among the media in the space, right? So it's really unfortunate that ESPN has decided to disband their esports coverage. That meant Jacob Wolf, you know, he asked to get out of his contract early so that he could go ahead and do this show. And I mean, kudos to EG in one way for stepping up and like providing him a platform to do that. Like, cool. They didn't have to do that. But so I'm like glad that show was preserved, even though it's like, it's all right. You know, I would rather just have him tweeting, to be honest. But no, it's like it's entertaining. People like it. Whatever. That's a good thing. But Travis logs on like right before that show is supposed to go live and just leaks everything. Pulls out the spreadsheet and just opens it. Tweet thread with each team separated so that you can and Travis isn't one to do that, right? Travis is actually kind of frustrating with that because he'll like put a video up without actually saying what the information contained is. He makes it hard because he wants you to go to YouTube, search for Travis Gafford, pull it up and click on his videos. You know, he wants to do that, train you through the YouTube algorithm, which is great for him. Like, I don't fault him for doing that, but he made it a little easier this time for you to get all of that information before the show happened. And the barbs going back and forth. It's been interesting to see that develop. Meanwhile, the esport maniacos or whatever, like coming out of nowhere to be like breaking all this news. I mean, maybe they were there in the space before and they weren't on my radar, but they are on my radar now. There's like LEC news, LCS news coming from them. And I tweeted out earlier today that, like, I think honestly, like, if anyone won free agency, it's them. You know what I mean? Like, they're like a firm presence here all of a sudden, which is really cool. I love that. I absolutely love that.
They've got sources, Cole. Apparently,
and the main kid is 18 years old. What's his? It's like Bloop something. Bloop GG. Pablo Suarez, Bloop GG is 18 years old. And
so if anybody out
dropping
there
all these leaks,
you're not old enough, or you don't have the experience or skills or schooling, that ain't right. Unless he's one of those child prodigies and he's already graduated from journalism school or something. I don't know. But
I just think that's a great development. I don't like want, you know, the Travis and Jacob thing. I don't want like people to just be like fighting in the space or whatever. Healthy competition is good. I don't want them to be petty or whatever. But in the midst of this, like seeing Blue GG come up out of nowhere and start doing stuff, it's just really cool, man. I like how that's developing. And
Cole, they got blooped.
You got blooped.
Yeah, blooped, son.
That's the sound of him dropping the leaks on the timeline. Bloop. And he walks away.
And then he says GG.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we'll see if this Damonte thing becomes concrete. Same with Huhi. I don't think Huhi's been officially announced, right? So we'll see. I anticipate that they will be. We saw the 100 next
video.
Yeah,
right? You've got to have a video to contextualize
to go with it, right? We saw the 100 next guys get released earlier this week, or I guess last week. So I expect there's going to be an announcement there also. So there will be more roster pieces falling into place, and Jordan and I will be here for you as your loving fathers and 100T fans. We'll be able to talk this through with you, but this was a fun one. Yeah. It's been a crazy day. Despite my griping, I do think that we're better today than we were yesterday. And that's a good feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty hard to argue that. Yeah. How good are we? Time will tell. It'll be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to watch. We've got some exciting pieces and players, and there'll probably be days where it's frustrating to watch, but Cole, so is sports. That is the nature of sports.
So is life. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and close the stream. What we'll do, we'll wrap up our pod recording, then we'll hang here and redeem some of these rewards that you guys have put up, and then we'll move to a host after that. So wrapping up the audio pod. Oh, and join our Discord, by the way, if you're not in here. We have a lot of new people today. Our Discord is awesome. I did not want to create it when we created it. I caved and created it, and now I'm very glad that we have it. Great place to be a 100T fan. So go ahead and jump on in there if you're not already, and we will continue the conversation there.
Yep. Let's wrap the pod. Should we say our thing?
Yeah, as always.
Stick around. Nobody leave.
Yeah, stick around. But we love you, and we miss you already.
Take care.
All right. I'm killing my recording, Jordan. You go ahead and do the same.
I will tell you, we got some fun people live as well, so we can pull off a pretty fun raid here after this is all done.
We pay our dues. Okay, so the channel points thing, during our regular podcast, it's hard for us to do all the redemptions in there, so that's why we're kind of holding off. And I think that'll be typical. I think during Rec League it's fine, and during our other streams it's fine, but during the like straight up podcast recording, it's a little difficult.
We're not going to do a whole bunch of air horns.
So we're sorry for that. I will, one more air horn for Dark Huth, who redeemed that earlier. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lore readings and one piece of life advice from Hi Bionic. Hi Bionic, you didn't actually put a question in.
This is
And
any topic.
Nickel, I'm going to hold your lore reading. We're going to cap it at the 5 lore readings so it doesn't get crazy. But I'll hold it. There's a queue actually that reminds us to redeem these, so you won't be forgotten. And I'll make sure you're here when we do it.
Never forget you guys.
Hi, Bionic. Think of a specific question. The description of that is to ask us a specific question. All right. So go ahead and think of that. Don't ask it yet because I got to get through these lore readings first. Jordan, are you prepared to hear?
I am. And also, Flashy Sing is here, and he's asked us a question. We'll also answer that before the end of the stream. We've got some work to do here, Cole. Let's get to it. Read me some lore.
Okay, this is from.
Can you read the part about Seraphine?
Oh, and no, it's not in the book. I should jump around randomly instead of reading like continuous 5, right? Right.
I mean, hey, lore master, you
I think that's the play, but I'll see what the chat says as I start this. Okay. This is from the Shadow Isles section, and it's called The Ruination. This is for, Bidinger reminding me. This is for BC, by the way. This is ode to BC.
This is my favorite holiday.
Far, far from the Blessed Isles, a king and queen ruled over an empire whose name none now recall. When the queen was poisoned, the king sent his best warriors to search for a cure. A cure for poison. Not an antidote, but a cure. One of his generals returned with the means to part the white mists of the Blessed Isles, home to the legendary waters of life. Yeah, we need to keep going on this. I'm not going to jump around. I'm going to keep going on this. So this next paragraph is for Peyton.
Congrats, Peyton.
Unfortunately, this news reached the king too late. The queen was already dead. Driven mad by grief and unwilling to listen to reason, the king set out in force for distant Helia. Ask Lampy. He's good at pronouncing words different ways. He immersed the corpse of his wife in the healing waters, unleashing a magical cataclysm that laid waste to the Blessed Isles.
Oh no.
Every living thing was cursed, transformed into roaming ravenous spirits caught somewhere between life and death. Ravenous spirits. And the white mist that had once protected them turned black and predatory.
Whoa.
Predatory mists. Okay, next paragraph goes out to Bidinger. Today, none but the most desperate scavengers and treasure hunters dare to visit the ruins of Helia or Helia, you pick, in search of the countless arcane treasures that must surely remain buried there. Some mortals have even learned to live close to the shadows and decay, though who can even begin to guess what horrors they might witness there? That's the ruination.
That's where Pike is from, right?
The Shadow Isles? Who knows? Thresh appears to be.
Chat? Is that where Pike is from?
Pike may have come out after the book.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
So, okay. So that, let's see. We owe 2 more. Next one is for Nova and then True Venom. So let's find. Okay, I'm going to read you the Frost Guard. I'm going to read the Frost Guard. This is from the Freljord section.
I like Freljord.
This one, okay, this is for Gilded Nova. The Ice Witch. Many among the Frost Guard believe their reclusive leader, Lysandra, is a living saint, bringing healing and wisdom to the tribes of the Freljord. The truth is perhaps more sinister, as she uses her elemental magic to twist the power of true ice, not false ice, into something dark and terrible, entombing or impaling any who would reveal her deepest secrets.
Cole, you know who thought about that when they were playing League of Legends?
No one.
Huhi.
On the flank, yes.
Yeah.
On the flank.
That's what the whole time he sat in the bush, he's read that passage in his head over and over again.
Nathan says English accent or riot. I can't do one, so sorry, riot. So the last one, the True Venom. This is also Freljord, same page. The Story Hunters. Most of Freljord's cultural history is passed on in a rich oral tradition, which you would know from the voice acting of each hero. Though this was not always the case, With her seemingly benevolent frost priest accepted in most of the tribes, Lysandra has long sought to purge certain uncomfortable details. It's italicized. From the oldest tales separating the legendary past from a bleak and austere present. Only time will tell if the Frostguard themselves can continue to deny the truth when they are eventually confronted by the horrors that lie hidden beneath their feet.
Wow.
That's your lore for the night. Now we've lost all viewers, so the raid's going to suck.
Hey, it was worth it, Cole.
Okay, hi, Bionic. Drop your question. Okay, this is my question. After my first year in the LCS, I am rumored to be benched and going to Academy after being one of the bottom mid laners in the league. I don't know how to feel. Where do I go from there?
All right.
All right, Jordan.
That's
you take it away.
Advice. This is for me?
Yeah.
All right, look. It was a rocky year on a lot of levels, right? And 2020, it was kind of crap. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's still crap. It's not changed. It's not better. It's still not a great year. 2021 is a new year. It's a new day. It's a new chance for you to prove yourself high Bionic in the LCS or Academy, whichever one you're in Academy now. So don't give up. Don't give up and keep grinding hard. And just look to some of the players in the current LCS lineups who have found themselves in that exact same spot. And what they do, they tried hard, they worked hard, and they made it back. And maybe they got a big payday too. We don't know. We'll never know. But maybe they did. So yeah, the last thing to do is to get a bad attitude and become the type of player who everyone wonders why they don't get picked up by more teams, and the fans all clamor for them to be signed, and no one ever signs them. It's because they're toxic, guys. That's why. Okay. There's your advice.
Venom says, do you read YouTube commenters? Usually, yeah, but lately there's been like no one on the YouTube, so we don't monitor it quite as closely, but I'll go back after and check that out. So sorry, YouTubers, if you were watching on YouTube and wondering why no one was there, come to our Twitch channel. Okay, Jordan, who are we hosting today? Oh, I ate, I had sweet potato Alfredo is something that my wife makes fairly frequently.
We had a free Papa Murphy's pizza. My wife was on a walk.
Can't beat free.
And somebody from Papa Murphy's said, hey, I'd like to give you this pizza. Apparently that's the level of desperation at Papa Murphy's right now. Please just take this free pizza. It was good. Yeah. I liked it.
All right, who are we hosting?
Mud Dog is live, as Lil Thieves has pointed out. Or sorry, it's Fate Cloud. I like Mud Dog.
Mud Dog. We could go Travis on this.
Slasher is also live.
Slasher. We went Mud Dog last time, so maybe we go Slasher. Let's go Slasher.
Go Slasher.
Slasher it is. Live. Oh wait, Kenny's on.
Kenny's also live.
We haven't ever raided Slasher. I don't think. Let's go Slasher.
Let's do Slasher.
All right, everybody, let's raid. We doing this. We already said it, but we love you and we miss you already.
Bye.
Bye. Raid time, raid time, raid time, raid time, raid time. Stay around for the raid. Say raid time, raid time, raid time. Gonna need that recipe. Which recipe? Oh, the sweet potato.